On today's Locked On NBA Squad show, let's unpack Denver versus OKC Game 7. Did it fundamentally change the future of either of these teams? Let's look at the conference finals, and is the CBA just completely changing the league we love? We'll talk about all that and more right now. And welcome to the Locked On NBA Squad show. My name is Nick Engstad, host of Locked On Mavericks. This is the Squad show. We take over the feed of your favorite Locked On shows. It's an open invite for any host to join and talk about anything they want in the NBA. Joining me from Locked On Jazz, that's right, David Locke. From Locked On Nuggets,
first playoff action for me.
From Locked On Nuggets,
for Nick too, by the way.
Ryan Blackburn. Yeah, I also did not participate in any playoff stuff. And from Locked On Nuggets, Ryland Styles. Others may join as well as we go along here. And gentlemen, we may end up with somewhere completely different, but let's start with Game 7. I've been looking at a lot of the Game 7s recently. There's a Reddit post that caught my eye. Game 7 disappointments. Over the last 12 Game 7s, 10 of them have been decided by double digits. And you have margins like, if you remember Mavs Suns from a couple years ago, you had like Celtics over the Sixers in like a 40-point game. You had the Nuggets lost to the Wolves last year in the Game 7. That was a pretty big one. And then this one is, we say some of the best words in sports is Game 7. Are we overhyping Game 7s, or is it just like it breaks open at a certain point?
I'll say tremendously overhyped. There's no reason for anybody to think anything about Game 7s ever at all. No, it's just so like the funny thing is Denver's played 2 Game 7s in these playoffs, and the first one that they played against the Clippers, they blew them out. Second one they played against the Thunder on the road, opposite situation, they got blown out. So it helps to have home court advantage, that's for sure. And it was unnatural that Denver lost their home court advantage game last year.
It doesn't actually. I thought that there was a note recently that home court advantage has gone Game 7 less than it ever used to.
Maybe that's true. It certainly feels like it from Denver's perspective, though, that they've been able to like kind of in their own personal hell at this point. So it's nice to be able to have Game 7 at home if you're Denver. But I do fully acknowledge that just in general, the playoffs has been completely the opposite in terms of home court advantage really mattering.
And by the time you get to a Game 7, it's like a war of attrition of just who can stay healthy. You're playing every other day. Playing at home certainly does help you. Depth certainly does help you. And then you just have such familiarity with these teams, especially within your own conference and then your own division, like you're guaranteed to play them 4 times, that by the time you get to a Game 7, you've played each other 8 times. And who can kind of scheme up the best wrinkle in that Game 7. And if it throws you off at all, you can kind of spiral a little bit. And then the health is the big deal as well. But I do think that Game 7s ultimately are a 1-game sample size. And it's like if this blowout, which happened in Game 2, did happen only in Game 2, we would have never been hyper-focusing on it. But because it happened in Game 7, it's a big deal. It was a standalone type of event. But even with that Game 2 heading into Game 7, we were talking about how this series was so close, so competitive with a blowout in hand. It just so happened OKC got another blowout in there to end the series.
Right. I mean, you predicted OKC in 7 before this series. Was anything different than what you expected, or is this about how you thought it was going to go?
Yeah, it was about how I thought it was going to go, except for you can't really predict that Aaron Gordon's going to get hurt. Michael Porter Jr. continued to battle it out all series long, and you got to give him a lot of credit. He just couldn't produce outside of Game 3 in this series to the level I thought he was going to be able to, even with that shoulder injury. But yeah, I mean, you saw Denver win a couple close games early on in the series that the Thunder were not prepared for, and that's factored in. You saw Jokic take over games, and the Thunder got the benefit of a win in a game that he completely took over in Game 5 that the Thunder were still able to win. But Denver had the top-end talent to be able to push Oklahoma City to their limits and to force Oklahoma City to try to deliver in big spots. And the unknown variable of how they would handle those high pressure moments, I think, let you see why this series got extended, partly because of how good Denver is, partly because of like you gave away Game 1 and because you just were so inexperienced, and Denver was a more poised, a more championship tested team at that time. If you don't give away Game 1, who knows what happens? You don't blow them out in Game 2, but do you still try to find a way to win Game 2? We'll never know. But I just thought that there were so many things that went into this from a Denver standpoint of having the best player in the world, which has typically been enough to extend series throughout NBA history, and the Thunder's unknown, that it felt like this was due for a very long series.
It seems counterintuitive in the sense that 2 teams have played an even enough series to get to a Game 7, but it does feel like Game 7 is like ripe for the blowout, right? Like the minute the minute it goes to the point in which, like, I don't think you're losing by 16. You're losing by 40 or you're losing by 4. Like, you let go of the rope at some point in the midst of a game 7 because this war of attrition that Ryland's talking about, you're exhausted, you're going as depth as you can, and when it's suddenly over, I think you let go of the rope. So I think that's the case. I mean, I think the interesting part of this series is this was the whole narrative of the experience versus the inexperience, which I'm not sure I totally bought it the whole time, but I think that's the breakthrough for Oklahoma City is whether, regardless of whether that narrative was true or not, they believe it now. And I think that's probably the most important thing that came out of a game 7. And I thought the quotes from Jalen and Shai after the game about how nervous they were was really interesting and revealing, that they openly kind of said that they were that nervous, and Jalen saying he didn't sleep the night before. And that led him to make a bad clothing choice and get fined. And then Shai comment that, that he was openly nervous about it. So I think that's for them to break through on that. I think whether that narrative is true or not, it's a pretty important moment.
They were the best team. They broke through. This was always the place that it probably should have been. I think Denver acquitted themselves really well throughout that series in terms of just staying attached and staying connected and doing what they could, kind of dragging OKC down into the mud in a lot of these games. And then Jokic just winning one of them and helping Denver kind of get through that point. But ultimately, I think that Denver has a lot of questions that they have to answer heading into the offseason. They obviously don't have a coach or a general manager, which made this all so much weirder than it probably should have been. But kind of at the same place that they were last year, except they have more questions than they did before.
Looking at the Western Conference Finals now, the Thunder are minus 375, Timberwolves plus 300. You look at the Eastern Conference, it's a much smaller margin, minus 154 for the Knicks. And so the Thunder are still they're a pretty big favorite in this conference final. Anybody feel good about the Timberwolves?
Well, I've been probably the most pro Timberwolves person around. I've had them as the second best team in the West all season long. I think they have the 8 best players, top to bottom, like quality of all 8 of their rotation spots. I don't think there's anyone in the West that has an 8 that's better than their 8, particularly when you think of DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker and Naz Reid coming off the bench. That's complete. And so I think, and then if you think about maybe their second, and what's interesting about this series is that if Oklahoma City's second best player is not as good as most second best players are, and nor is Minnesota's. So that's where I think you used to say you had to have a top 10, a top 20, a top 50 player in the NBA to win. Both these teams have a top 10 player, but I don't think either of them have a top 20 player in the NBA. And then there's a debate of whether they actually have a top 50 player in the NBA after that. So I think Chet's probably there and Jalen's getting close, but I don't think Jalen's at 20 yet. And Julius Randle's been awfully close here recently, but I don't think he's top 20. And then we can discuss Gobert if we had 3 hours. So
would we be involved in that conversation?
How many times would screen assists come up in that conversation? Right, exactly. I wonder.
So I don't know. I think that's, the one thing I would say on this series, particularly to this matchup, is Minnesota's weakness is that their offense can go really wonky and they turn the ball over. And that's Oklahoma City's strength. I thought Ryland made a good point on Locked On Sports today that the Warriors used to kind of bludgeon you with their defense into like these threes and into this kind of, and suddenly be on a 14-0 run, that Oklahoma City does it with a flurry of turnovers they create. And you end up in this kind of whirlwind of turnovers. I think that'll be the same thing in this series, that's Minnesota's weakness. And I just don't know how Mike Conley plays in this series. I think those are the two things that sway me here to believe that my worst nightmare in life is going to happen. And that's Oklahoma City advancing to the NBA Finals.
Oh.
Could you, by the way, Ryland, one thing. So it was fine when your fan base didn't know anything about the NBA and did this cute little collegiate bullcrap where they stood until their team scored every night. So 1, it's backwards and stupid and wrong. And 2, you're now like an NBA Finals fandom. So can you please stop that? Because you should be doing it the other way.
The Mavs do that too now.
The Mavs, the Nuggets, they do this.
We definitely do that too.
It's the stupidest thing. Why do fan bases do this? It's backwards. Because if your team goes on a drought and you have to call timeout and you're down 9-0, you're standing during the timeout looking like a fool. It's totally backwards.
There's been a lot of that before.
I was gonna say there was definitely a Mavs game this year where they stood for like 5 minutes to start the game.
It's the stupidest thing. Who started this absurdity? The Thunder, and other people followed.
Trendsetters, David. Trendsetters. Wear your shirts. Be loud. Be proud.
All the Thunder fans do is just follow. They'll boo. Somebody next to them does. They'll all wear their shirts.
Hey, the Brian Burns marketing machine. I know the guy who's behind it. He's the best there is. I'm all for it. Like, the shirts are amazing. It's incredible. Just sit down. Or stand until your team allows a basket and then sit down, because that would be the right way to do it, particularly now that you're good. It was cute when you were bad, but now you're good. Don't do that anymore.
If somebody did sit down, the camera would go to them and like put them on the Jumbotron like they do with the shirts at the beginning, like before the game, pregame. They'll point somebody out that's not wearing the shirt and like shame them into putting the shirt on.
I honestly like fan bases and I like teams that peer pressure their fans into actually acting like fans. I think that it's good because there's too much of a world right now where everybody thinks that they're too cool to put on the shirts. It's why the Nuggets have done away with that and have done towels for the entire playoff run. They never once put out a shirt. It was insane, but like it's just how it is at this point.
Towels are cheaper than shirts.
Yeah,
very much cheaper, very less effective. If you have a towel waving around, can you really make ample noise that you want to make?
They wave those towels like nobody's business. I'll call them a team full of DeAndre Jordans right there. Let's go.
If you want to talk about backwards ways of living, we can talk about Denver all we want to. But for now, let's talk about the Western Conference Finals, where the Thunder have a great chance. I think that the odds are a bit too wide in this series. I think that Minnesota matches up really well with OKC. They can do similar things that OKC likes to do, which they can use to turn it against them. It'll come down to turnovers and 3-point shot making. Like Minnesota's going to be able to create some open threes because of the way OKC plays defense. OKC will as well. Who's going to hit those shots? And can Denver protect the ball? If Minnesota can protect the ball, then this is going to be a series that goes the distance, and it can be anyone's series.
Coming up, let's get into the Eastern Conference and then how the CBA is changing the league. We'll talk about that and more. Locked On NBA Squad Show continues. Today's episode of the Locked On NBA Squad Show is brought to you by Car Guru. Shopping for a car should be exciting. It should be like watching a Game 7 where it actually comes down to the last couple shots here. But instead, it's become exhausting. There's too many things. There's too many different factors and variables. There's too many people like telling you the wrong thing. Like if you've ever been to like a used car dealership and they're like, hey, I'm lying to you as my job. Like you don't need to deal with that. With over 4 million listings, Car Guru has the most used and new cars, all kinds of stuff. They have more than any other major online marketplace in the US. They verify dealers, they provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice, because it's a really big choice to make in your life. A car, you're gonna drive it every day and you're gonna pay a lot of money for it. Check it out. If you need a deal you can trust, Car Guru makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings, which is awesome. Plus, in-depth vehicle details give you peace of mind before stepping into any lot. It's no wonder SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows Car Guru is the #1 most visited car shopping site out there. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Guru at carguru.com. Go to carguru.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CARGURUS.com, carguru.com. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Squad Show, Locked On NBA Squad Show. We're here talking about the conference finals. We talked about Thunder, Minnesota. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference side of this.
Thunder, Minnesota, because I had a really
do the one more thing.
Geeky note and I didn't get to get it in.
Go for it. Is it about Gobert?
No.
Oh, okay.
So during the regular season, the Thunder had the 4th best half-court offense, and Minnesota had the 13th best. So it seems like this huge variation, and really important in this series because Oklahoma City had the #1 half-court defense and Minnesota had the #2 half-court defense. But if you dig into it a little bit and you go up against only top 10 defenses, then their offenses in the half-court basically equalize. So I think that's an interesting little note. Like the Thunder's offense was better all year, but clearly feasted on bad defenses, whereas Minnesota actually played a little bit like they were actually a little bit better. They're not the exact same, but they're close. I mean, Oklahoma City is the 6th best half-court offense, and Minnesota is now the 9th best half-court offense when going against a top 10 defense. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting little note. And the other one is that Oklahoma City really stopped offensive rebounding against elite defensive teams, where Minnesota, that's actually kind of what they did, is they pounded the glass against elite defensive teams, and that is a Oklahoma City weakness. So worth keeping an eye on.
That's clearly something, of course, that they would do in this round against a team like OKC, where Chet Holmgren was a little bit smaller. You can be bullied under, and especially with OKC probably going with one big in a lot of these lineups that they're going to throw out there. So they'll be playing small, OKC will, and Minnesota is just, they're just so naturally physically gifted, large, athletic, physical, that's a team that is going to put a lot of pressure on OKC in a way that Denver just couldn't.
Well, I don't think they want to play two bigs because then Rudy can stay around the basket.
Yeah. You're going to have to go solo big and trust Caruso, trust J-Dub onto Randall, and Rudy's a non-factor offensively at the rim, with Chet there to deter him. So I think that's where Minnesota could make up some of that margin and really dominate on the glass and in second chance points, which are going to be a premium with how good these defenses are.
I just still go back to who's gonna, if Mike Conley can't play very much, who's gonna dribble on the Timberwolves? Like that, I came down to it in that game 7. You're watching, like, do they only kind of trust Jokic and sometimes Murray to like initiate offense at a certain point?
Secretly, it was like they had Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown bringing the ball up the floor a lot, and then Aaron Gordon had one leg. Michael Porter had one arm to dribble with before the injury, and now he had 0.5. So it's pretty tough for Denver, but they were able to manage the pressure reasonably well. But yeah, you're right. Minnesota, that's obviously going to be a factor for them. Nikhil, probably, I would guess.
Interesting. On the East side of things, Pacers versus Knicks. What are your big questions? Anybody have a feeling? I guess what FanDuel said, that the Knicks are minus 154, so not like a huge favorite, but are the favorite.
Some public money, of course, coming in for the Knicks, but I really like the Pacers, man. They've been really, really impressive. They have so much depth. They have so many layers that they can throw at these teams. And Haliburton is, as long as he is getting free and getting downhill consistently, that Pacers offense is going to cook. They just are. So that really does seem like the battle to me. Can Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, can those guys prevent Tyrese Haliburton from going right? I don't know. Like he is pretty good at it.
Yeah, I love the Pacers. I think that they have the attrition we talked about, that you're going to have to get through another series that will go a really long way. I think that it'll end no quicker than 6. I think it'll go 7 in this series, and they have that depth to manage that. And I think that they just have a lot of guys that you're comfortable with, kind of in their scoring by committee role that they play, that they're going to be able to find enough offense to win in this series.
So neither of these teams are elite defensively, right? They're both very, very average defensively. I think New York was 12th best and Indiana was 13th best. I think they're both bottom 10 in defending the shot. Who finds a way to impact the series defensively? I mean, this is two very, very good offensive teams. Off the top of my head, I think Indiana was 5th best half court, 2nd best transition. New York was like 6th best half court, about 6th best transition. These are two elite offensive teams who, if either of them can find a way to impact in any way, shape, or form defensively, because they're virtually the exact same defensive team, other than New York fouled more than Indiana. Otherwise, they were almost the exact same.
Kind of would imply, I think, if you're trusting individual players, that OG Anunoby would be the guy that I would be leaning on in that series to give them a little bit more stability. But so if you're trying to get somebody to at least slow down somebody on the Pacers, then he can match up with Pascal Siakam, but he could also probably switch on to Haliburton and do a reasonable job there. But Bridges is another one that just the length and athleticism there, something that the Pacers were able to manage in the previous round, though. So it's hard to figure out. That is going to be a tremendous matchup, but also one that should be very high scoring.
Actually, I mean, I think Minnesota and Oklahoma City are the two best teams that are left. And I actually think that series could be horrific to watch.
Yeah.
Like half-court possessions could just turn into Ant or Shai going one-on-one with just nothing else, because the other teams are so good defensively. Both those teams, whereas Indiana and New York might be just a frolicking, fun, up and down, awesome series to watch.
Frolicking? Is that what you call what Jalen Brunson does? Is that he learned from one of the best?
I will say, as a Jazz fan, the fact that Jalen Brunson kicked our ass and beat us in a playoff series with Luka does not look nearly as ridiculous as it did at the time.
Yeah. In 2022, which by the way, that was 3 years ago. I just got a notification, like a look back on one of my apps, and I was like, that was 3 years ago, that run.
That's it.
But it's insane how much the NBA changes in that amount of time. But yeah, Brunson carrying the Mavs in a couple of those games is wild to look back on and see. He's now playing for the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Coming up, the CBA is changing things. We're seeing these teams. We're going to have another new NBA champion, like 7 in the last 7 years. Stuff is changing. Is it changing for the better, and why? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Locked On NBA Squad Show. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Squad Show is brought to you by Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. The copy says that, and it's true. I was intrigued. Heard so much about their quality. I've heard so much about how they feel, the fabric, all that. And I was interested. They sent us a pair. I'm going to be honest. They sent us one, and I was like, you know what? This is so good. I'm going to buy some myself. And I did. I went and bought some more of the briefs. They're awesome, and they're always my first pick after a laundry day. You go, all right, what's your first pick after? If you have everything in front of you, I'm going to pick Skims. That's the first one I'm going to pick. Shop Skims men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA, and Skims stores. They have those as well. Go check it out. They have a line for everybody. They have boxer briefs, classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance, comfort, and style. Let them know that we sent you after you place an order at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Select podcast in the survey. Select our show, Locked On NBA, whatever your favorite Locked On show is. In the dropdown that follows, Skims, the official underwear partner of the NBA, the WNBA, and USA Basketball. Skims.com/LockedOnNBA. It's the Squad Show. We're taking over the feed of your favorite show. We've been talking about the conference finals, and we're going to see a new champion. 7 different ones in 7 years. It's never happened in the NBA, and we're about to see it. Is it just because the CBA is making it harder for teams to just maintain or retain talent in any way?
I don't think that the Nuggets needed much of an excuse to duck the second tax apron, but they did it anyway. Did not bring back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope this last year, and that would have been somebody who would be pretty helpful in that OKC series. So unfortunate that they didn't have him. But Bruce Brown, also somebody that left. That wasn't the CBA's fault. But it does just feel like Denver lost their depth in terms, like, because they were trying to keep together the best possible starting lineup that they could. And they lost out in a lot of ways because OKC was better 6-9, 6-10 than Denver was. And that gave them the extra wrinkles and the extra ability in a game 7 to just have one more matchup that they could go to.
Here's an interesting little numbers note for you. The Phoenix Suns' top 2 players, $101 million between the two of them. 76ers, 100. Milwaukee, 97. Golden State, 103. Lakers, 91. Boston was at 84. And frankly, so are Indiana, Minnesota, and the Knicks are all at 85 million. And their top 2 players. The Thunder are only at 65 because their players haven't gotten paid yet. But it makes you wonder whether or not the old model, and if you go look at Golden State, they're at 127 for their top 3. The Lakers are at 108. Milwaukee's at 121. The 76ers are at 135. The Suns were at 150 in one of the most grotesque roster developments of all time. Indiana's top 3 players make 103 million. The Knicks make 109 million. Oklahoma City's make 81 million. And the one that I think is just most fascinating is Minnesota's at these numbers because they traded Towns. And by trading Towns, who's better than probably Julius Randle or Dante DiVincenzo, they went from 34 minutes of action to about 58 minutes of action between DiVincenzo and Randle, if not 60. And that makes me wonder whether the model now, the old idea of the big 3, no, I don't think so. And I'm not even sure you can big 2 it anymore with 2 really high price players anymore.
It's wild. The salary cap was 70 million in 2016. Like, It was 58 million in 2014. Like, just looking at those numbers, they have increased so much, and the percentage of what a max player is increased so much that's why I keep saying for the Mavs, like, you cannot do a Kevin Durant trade where you trade like 4 guys, because you lose 4 of Clay, Gafford, PJ, Caleb Martin, and Najee Marshall. All right, you just lose 4 of them. Like, that's all your depth to get a Kevin Durant or somebody like that. It's a wild proposition. We haven't.
If you think about it, for years, the thing was all you had to do on a trade was decide what team got the best player, and that's who won the trade. It may now be who got the most rotation minutes.
So you're saying the Mavs won the Luka trade because they got AD and they got Christie, who are both gonna? Is that?
Many are saying
AD gets 0.
Yeah, AD doesn't play, so that's tough. But I think that it also is
came back this year. He could have shut it down, guys.
Well,
sure. I do also think that, to David's point, it's a financial thing, also a minutes played thing of like it or not, the sport now is more taxing than it used to be in different ways, right? Used to be, it was so taxing because guys were taking trains to the games and they were playing back-to-backs every night. And but now it's like, doing that. But now it's like, the physical nature of the game, the explosiveness, the science that you put your body through in a game that you can track is so different that it just wears you out. And they haven't lessened the 82 game schedule, and they haven't let these series breathe more. And so, yeah, Denver, like, they don't have depth. They also had a team good enough to win. Like, Aaron Gordon was their 3rd best player this series, and he turned into a non-factor in game 7 solely because he popped his hamstring in game 6, and they didn't have anyone else to go to. So, like, you need depth because inevitably you're going to need to rely on it.
Thanks for the reminder, Ryland. Really
How many times can we bring up that the Nuggets lost that game 7? It's like every segment. We just keep going back. Keep dipping back into that. It's
my new Luka trade.
Great.
We brought that up. We brought that up too at a certain point.
Well, no, Matt Moore was like,
Ryan and I will just sit over here and enjoy ourselves in the Rocky Mountains. You bring up the lottery every time you can, Nick. Ryland, you bring up game 7, and we'll just sit over here in the Rocky Mountains and enjoy ourselves. By the way, there's a snowstorm coming, Ryan. You'll be pretty pleased with that.
I'll make sure to bring my sweatshirt and shorts, which is the national Colorado weather for a snowstorm in July.
It was 90 degrees here in Dallas.
We got the rigged lottery. The referendum on tanking, I think, is far overblown, though. I think that you should, like, what's Utah supposed to do? Like, yes, they got screwed by the results of the lottery, but like, the math is the math, and they put themselves in the very best chance to go get the very best player that they could possibly net in any transactional window. Their very best chance of netting a really high caliber player was from the draft lottery and getting Cooper Flagg. So they're going to have to do it again. They're going to have to go tank again and hope that they get lottery luck. The same thing happened to the Thunder, by the way. Like, they had a chance in their first tanking year to get 2 top 5 picks. They get none, and they get Josh Giddey. Like, yeah, that sucked in the moment. They went back to the well, and then they end up with Chet at number 2, and they end up getting J-Dub at number 12, and then they continue to move on from there, and then we see what their team is now. But it's like, it's not a point and laugh at Utah. It's like, oh, the numbers screwed them. Like, the math and ping pong balls screwed them. They've got to just do this whole thing again.
Well, what's fascinating is if we look at the final 4 teams, there's only one free agent of any element in any of these 4 teams, right? The only free agent
they hired his dad
is Jalen Brunson to the Knicks, and everything else.
Hartenstein.
All roads lead from the Mavericks.
Right. I mean, Hartenstein's an interesting one to our past conversation. Of the only team that could afford to give Hartenstein $30 million was the Thunder, who had a bunch of young talent that they don't have to pay, and they gave it to him for 2 years. Like, it's a really brilliant move by Sam Presti. But to our point of, like, none of the other teams in the league could afford to pay Hartenstein $30 million because of what we're talking about with depth. Your only way you're building your teams now, really, if you look at the big moves on all these rosters, it's the Pascal Siakam trade that put Indiana into another level. It's the Julius Randle, Karl Anthony Towns trade, but also it's really the Rudy Gobert trade that has gotten them to the conference finals 2 years in a row. Like, you go walk through these, it's pretty interesting to see that they're, and then you could probably decide it's the OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges trade from the Knicks. Like, it's a trade league now, and you either are acquiring draft assets through trades or you're acquiring players through trades.
What's Cooper Flagg's dad doing in these days? I Might try to
working with the
loop him
Celtics
into
already.
the Nuggets organization.
Mr. Flag, he's like our age, isn't he?
I have no idea. Actually, that's funny.
And he's not my age, Nick. He might be up Top's age.
You know what Cooper Flag's dad does?
No.
Works for the Celtics.
Nothing now.
Oh yeah. Hey, good call. I wouldn't do it either.
He was
Good
a
gig if you can
sports
get it.
management student at University of Maine. So he's got a background. There's no reason why an NBA team shouldn't be hiring him.
Special advisor. Let's go.
Oh man, to the business office or whoever else.
I love it.
That should be the next Locked On Mavs. Should the Mavs get ahead of this and hire him right now? Just say, you know what? You've hired your dad
5 years ahead of time. Do you know what Nico Harrison said his timeline is for? It's 3 years. That's what he
It should
said
be a
his time-
day.
That's what he said his timeline is.
Are you going to hold him to it?
I mean, it is what it is. His contract is 3 years, so we'll see.
Calvin Booth's contract was 3 years, and the first year was really good.
First year of Nico Harrison was really good. They made the finals.
It was all downhill since, huh?
They made the finals.
Parallels all around.
Absolutely
Who's your GM
wild.
going to be, Ryan?
They think Ben Tenzer's gonna pop in there. He's the interim right now. They think they're gonna just bring him on from within, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right call. You need somebody who can connect with some free agents and trades, and Denver just feels comfortable spinning their tires and doing nothing.
I have a guy who has connections all over the league, lots of relationships with players.
Nicholas Harrison.
He needs-
He should rebrand. He should take a new job and rebrand as Nicholas Harrison. And,
Just go. All right, go check out all the great shows all throughout Locked On. There's a link in the description wherever you're listening and watching this. You can find Locked On Jazz, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Thunder, Locked On Mavs, and all the other great shows all throughout Locked On NBA. Go also check out the Locked On Daily Show, Locked On NBA Game Night, Locked On NBA Daily. Great stuff all the time on the Locked On NBA feed. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On NBA Squad.